Since 1983, FAME has helped business and education work for Maine. Contact the authority, the Finance Authority of Maine. You're watching Mainebiz Sunday, Maine's business news source.
Today we're discussing the lobster industry and the long-term strategic plan that the Governor's Task Force on Economic Sustainability of the Lobster Industry released last year. To help us understand these issues, we'll be talking with Dane Somers, Executive Director of the Maine Lobster Promotion Council, John Hathaway, CEO of Shucks Maine Lobsters, and David Etnier, Deputy Commissioner of the Maine Department of Marine Resources. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. As we were talking before we started, there was supposed to be another person on the panel today that was going to be a working lobsterman, but as we all said, they're not here because they're working. Right. Okay, good. We're going to jump right in. We're going to be talking about the lobster industry. I want to start off first with just getting a sense of kind of the state of the industry and where we are. And David, I'm going to start with you. Can you give us, this is the harvest season, the primary harvest season. How's it going? Are they landing more? Tell us what it's like out there.
Sure. This is the strongest time of year for the Maine lobster fishery. The month of October in particular is when the bulk of Maine lobsters get landed, and some of the highest quality Maine lobsters. This year, 2010, we're seeing really good catches on the coast of Maine. We're seeing, to date, and this is not counting probably the month of September and the month of October and a good chunk of September, over 60 million pounds landed to date. And again, some of the prime months not even factored in yet.
So are we on track with other years? Or?
We're probably ahead. I mean,
Okay.
I was talking to the state's lobster biologist earlier today, Carl Wilson. He was thinking that we might be around 80 million by the end of the year. Some people in the industry think it's going to be higher than that. So
Okay.
it's been a very good year. There's some reasons for that biologically, but that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, I want to follow
Sure.
up with the biological question, the science.
Yep.
Talk to us about the science. How stable is the stock? Are we okay? We're harvesting, getting good harvest. Is that good? Are we?
No, it is good. It is a good thing, and it is a healthy fishery. It's not an overfished fishery, and it's viewed that way not only in the state level but on the federal level and the interstate level. The various measures have been in effect for Maine for a long time have paid off for the industry. The various conservation measures have paid off. That's a very level fishery, and the future looks good. From the various scientific research that we do on an annual basis, the future looks good for the near term.
As long as we manage it correctly.
Correct.
Yep.
Alan, I'd also point out that, as David knows, and Kyle's done a lot, and George LaPointe, the commissioner's done a lot of work for the last 2 years. We have a client board that has applied for MSC certification for sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
I chair that.
MSC is what?
Is Marine Stewardship Council,
Okay.
and it's an international logo. Basically, it just if you gain that logo, it's like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval to say yes, your fishery is sustainable. I chair that committee, and I think that the final assessment will show that the fishery is extremely healthy, and it's to a very high scientific standard.
And that kind of certification also adds to the marketing value.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because people today, there's no doubt that the consumer wants to know that when they put their money out, particularly for seafood, that they're not doing any harm to the environment, they're not doing any harm to a fishery. They really vote with their pocketbooks. And to be able to say, not only to tell people, like on a show like this, but have that
Yep.
seal on there that
Yep.
tells the consumer that it's a sustainable fishery is critical, I think.
Okay, great. Pocketbooks. I'm going to turn to you, Dane, and ask you the question about, so we've been going through and are still in an economic downturn, some coming out of a bit, but how has that impacted the industry in general? How did that impact prices and demand in the last year in particular, and are we seeing any rebound?
I think what we're seeing is that when the crisis element hit in the fall of 2008, it couldn't have been at a worse time. As David mentioned, right at the peak of our harvest.
Would be a good time for a
year.
crisis like that. I'm just kidding.
Mid-February when nobody's watching.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that hurt the industry. And the long-lasting effects on the economy is that 75, maybe close to 80% of lobster is consumed in restaurants, and a number of those were higher-end restaurants. They got hurt worse than anybody, and they still haven't recovered. So we're seeing the effects of that. But one of the things that we identified in 2008 was that fall was typically a strong harvest season, but very weak in demand. After Labor Day, people tend to forget about lobster.
Right.
And largely as a result of kind of the crisis nature, we launched a promotional campaign in the fall of 2008. We'd never done that before, and we saw some surprisingly positive results. So we beefed that up, and in 2009, we ran a full fall campaign positioning fall as a perfect season to enjoy Maine lobster. And we're seeing some good positive results from that. We're repeating that again this year. So we kind of opened up another season.
I think what it also did is the lower price allowed the more people to actually celebrate with Maine lobster, which is what Maine lobster is all about. And so I think in a way it did really help because, as David pointed out, the catch is up this year. My daughter's a sternman down in Stonington. Her boat is she says, crushing it every day. And so the catch is really high, but the price is also very high.
Well, I was going to ask,
so there are more people now. There's more demand.
Where are we at the price of the
It's
boat?
about $1 more than last year.
Okay.
Absolutely.
This year overall.
And the year before, are we getting, how far are we off where we were at peak, I guess?
Well, Maine had a very unusual peak in the early part of this century, now 2005, thereabouts, of astronomical prices.
Okay.
But we're still down from that. But we're $1 up from where we were last year, which is significant. The lobstermen are generally
and the supply is up. So that means the demand is up, and so
somebody's eating them.
People are eating them, and we've gotten them out into the market. And I think that's what this discussion is all about. How are we going to get them out into the market, create more demand because we have that sustainable supply?
Okay, let me move on to that. Marketing. And I did want to follow up on that Governor's Task Force report. It was the Mosley Group, I guess, that did that in 2009. They really called for a new marketing development entity for Maine with an annual budget between $7 and $11 million. So I wanted to ask you, Dane, what do you think about that? What's your thoughts on that, and how would that be used, and where would the money come from?
Well, that's three questions all at once.
Okay,
you know?
pick one. What do you think about it? Is that a good idea?
First of all, I was one of the initial members of the task force, and one of the things that we had talked about and have talked about is what kind of structure best serves the industry. And we had looked at the Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute model. Seems to be very successful. Of course, they represent all of the seafood products in Alaska, not just lobster. But it's been successful for a number of different reasons, so it makes sense if something's working, maybe we could do something more like that. The other aspect of that is that it is absolutely vital in this industry for everybody, all segments of the industry, fishermen, dealers on the shore, buyers, processors. We're all looking for the same result, which is to make sure that we have a long-term economic sustainable business model. And with that, we all have to work together. And I think the discussions that we've been having have been positive in that regard. I had a
quote from John Drurin, the lobster fisherman from Cutler Zone A Lobster Council, and he's vice chair of the Maine Department of Marine Resources Lobster Advisory Council. This was an article in September Commercial Fishing News. He says, in responding to that kind of issue, that the type of marketing that's been discussed will help niche markets, and some will make more money, but that does not mean that the fishermen will. Yeah. So talk about that.
I think the big issue is that the fishermen and everybody in the industry has to understand who the customer is, and as opposed to what the distribution channel is. Okay, and the fishermen have to realize that the customer is the person at the table, whether it's in the restaurant, like Dane said, or the person at home. What do they want? And we have to find out what they want. And that's what Alaska did first. Right. Alaska didn't come out and start marketing how great Alaska salmon is. They first did the research to determine what does the consumer want. They're the customer. And everybody in the industry, from the fishermen, and I call it trap to table. From the trap, it's very important. That whole story, the traceability is critical to what the consumer is going to pay at the end. But the consumer who eats it at the table, that's who we have to identify. That's where more work has to be done.
We're going to wrap this segment right there. We're going to come back and follow up on that issue of sustainability and certification, and the marketing issue again, too, and some research questions. So stick around. We'll be right back. Stay with us. We'll be right back to continue this discussion on the lobster industry in Maine.
Mainebiz Sunday is brought to you by Bangor Savings Bank, where you can enjoy free ATMs worldwide.